Hey everyone, welcome to the Recruitment Show. We are talking about all of the major topics that people are discussing right now. Everything recruiting, future of work, and everything in between. I've got guests from all over the world to come and share their perspective and their thoughts and feelings and all of that stuff on these key topics. It might not be politically correct. It might not be what you want to hear, but it's people's perspectives, and it's important to hear people's perspectives. I love storytelling, and I think one story can illuminate a million more and really increase our understanding of these topics. So sit back, whether you're watching live or after, grab a drink, take a seat, and enjoy.
Amazing. Paolo, thank you so much for joining me. I'm gonna stick a little there we go, a little ticky tape to tell everyone who you are. We had a great chat a couple of weeks ago, which I've been thinking about a lot. And so maybe just to introduce you, you've done a lot of stuff: best-selling author, exec coach, wonderful HR career, and the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, and you've written a bunch of books. And so that's how we've come together. And you've just released the 7 Games of Leadership, and your wonderful publishers got in touch, and it's been great. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think a lot of people, well, it feels like there's so much going on in the world right now. I don't know whether it's just because we can read and look and listen and scroll through social media, or whether there's always been a lot going on in the world. But I think leadership's been affected hugely, certainly from the conversations I've had. So thank you so much for coming, and I'm looking forward to our chat.
Well, my pleasure to be here today with you, Lewis. Really.
Thank you. So, how did there's a lot of books on leadership, and you were going through this with me last time, and it's really interesting. So the 7 Games of Leadership, and it's interesting you're gamifying leadership. How did this book come about? It'd be great to start there, and then I'd love to explore some of the topics that people are asking me and talking about around leadership.
Well, listen, I have to start with a story, which is my hero. One of my heroes is my daughter. She's 17 now. And I've been asking her pretty much every Saturday, what did you learn this week? What is the most important thing that you've learned? And for many years, of course, she responded by referring to a class that she took at a school, like chemistry or French or whatever it is, history. But then a couple of years ago, when I asked her this question, she said, Daddy, no, this time I'm asking a question. How long have you been working? And I said, well, young lady, I started in 1988. And he said, oh, great. And what did you learn in 30 years? Well, Jesus, this is quite a heavyweight question, as you can imagine. So I asked her a couple of weeks to think about. Then I took her for a sushi dinner. Of course, she loves sushi. And we spent 2 wonderful hours together. And then and she listened, she asked some question, and I thought that the conversation was done. Then one day, she left a yellow sticker like this one on my computer, and she said, Daddy, I loved your story. Why don't you write a book about it? And so basically, the reason why I wrote this book is to answer to my daughter. And what I told her is, yes, it's true. I've been a HR director for many years. I've met thousands of people, interviewed, I calculate one day, probably around 8,000 people in my life. I've been doing coaching, executive coaching for more than 20 years. I'm a professor. I've given so many speeches. So I was lucky to meet thousands of people in my career, Lewis, and also from completely different nationalities and background and sectors and level of seniority, from literally Nobel Prizes to very junior individuals. Now, but in reality, what I realized is what I said to my daughter. I said, I didn't have thousands of conversations. I had thousands of times the same conversation, because I noticed that some challenges, some questions, some issues constantly and chronically come back with a regularity that I found astonishing. And then the reason why I wrote this book, because I call them games, because I think that we are playing some games. And when I say game, I don't mean in a shallow way, but in understanding that our rules that regulate the growing as an individual. And to me, the 7 games of leadership are the 7 phases that you go through in your personal and professional development, which I've noticed in 30 years of meeting and working with amazing people.
Love that. Your big question from your daughter. Very big question. I've got It's always hard to answer the simple questions, right? What have you learned in your life? I love that. You mentioned you've had over 8,000, 10,000, you probably had way more than that, similar conversations. What are some of the key themes that have kept coming up for people? And I get the sense also that your focus is on like the individual and our journey. I think I called it the journey from I to we. I quite like to call it that, but love to hear your thoughts on it.
But listen, without mechanically repeating, but there are some kind of difficult junctures in that journey, in the ways. The first game, I call it the inner game. And the inner game is basically clarity about what you stand for, the set of values, why you're doing what you're doing. And what you're doing to me is not a technical response, like, I'm a financial analyst or I'm an environmental specialist, I'm a lawyer. It's really why you wake up in the morning. What do you believe? And to me, clarity about the sense of purpose is fundamental. And I realize that this is not always the case. I know some people end up going to a train station and taking the first train that is leaving the station. I mean, you need to know where you're going in your life.
How do you, 100%. A lot of people I speak with, that's sometimes even then it's, it's they're a little bit lost, because you kind of, if you've gone through education, you've kind of, your roots been spelled out a little bit, right? You go to school, you do well at school, you go to university, then suddenly there's so many trains to choose from.
No, I
didn't even go.
No, there is a wonderful phrase from Alice in Wonderland that said, if you don't know where you're going, every street will get you there. No? And to me, what I was trying to understand in my interviews and my conversation is the consistency of choices that you made over your life. And consistency doesn't mean that you never change. It means that it must be a fil rouge, a common theme that permeates your choices. Now, for me, I know it sounds a bit romantic, but perhaps because I'm Italian, I'm entitled to have some element of romanticism. What gives me joy is helping people and organization in the growing, and when I'm able to do so, I fulfill my deep sense of purpose, which is nothing to do with the money that I make. It's to do with the purpose that I have or I don't have. So the first game to me is clarity of purpose, which is not about in France they said the métier. It's not about the job that you're choosing, but the reason why you're doing that job. No, so that's the first. The second one is once you find out what you want to do, you play the better game, and the better game is the capacity to gain credibility and respect and value to the people and the community that you serve. No, better game therefore is becoming bloody good in doing what you're doing. And I quote this very simple example. Many years ago, I was a journalist for music, and I interviewed Eric Clapton, I remember, and with a bunch of other journalists. And one of the journalists that were in Milan and Eric Clapton was about to play, it was more than 30 years ago now. He said, well, Mr. Clapton, you've not played, you have not produced a record for 5 years. What have you done the last 5 years? And Eric Clapton said, well, I've been playing guitar every day. And the journalist said, but you're the best guitar player in the world. They said, that's the reason why I'm the best player in the world. So it's maybe a bit of a joke, but it's actually, he was absolutely right to say the better game is the determination to constantly improve, even if maybe your reputation to be pretty good, but it's not enough. And if you look at the people that have achieved phenomenal results, could be Eric Clapton, could be Michael Jordan, or could be whatever person we think of, and the better game is a fundamental moment of the life. The one after, I call it the carrying an outer game, is fundamentally happens when you start to be responsible for a team, and you need to demonstrate also a mindset of intellectual curiosity to find out what's happening outside your sector. So if you work in banking, you cannot ignore climate change or geopolitics, okay? So you need to have a mindset of learning and curiosity. That doesn't mean that you have to be an expert in every single domain. Nobody can, but at least to understand what would be the impact of artificial intelligence, geopolitics, infodemics, or whatever it is in whatever you're doing. No, so this is to me is a difficult juncture. But the one that is probably the most difficult that I saw so many people struggling, including myself, is the crisis game, which is fundamentally sometimes around probably mid-40s, you start to scratch your head thinking, how do you want to play the second half of your life compared to the first one? So in soccer terms, you finish the first half, you're sweating, you've probably got some bruises, and you're about to go back to the pitch, and you still have to play the second half. And you're probably on your mid-40s. This is a difficult moment for everybody's life because your kids are probably teenagers, your parents are elderly, you maybe bought a house, you have a mortgage. So you have a lot of obligations, legal and ethical, in your life, and you feel somewhere trapped. And at the same time, you know that you're not going to put the next 20 years the effort that you put in the last 20, because not that you become lazy, but you start to be interested in other things, okay? So how you manage that crisis, to me, is a difficult moment. And I notice that some people tend to postpone the moment, or they just deny, or they want to regress, pretend they're still in their 30s or 20s when they're maybe in their 50s. So it's a difficult moment. And actually, I devote a big chunk of my book in try to explain what are the mechanisms to grow in that moment. And if you manage...
Do you need to consciously do something at that moment? Like when you realize that moment is here, is there something you need to...
In my view, yes. And actually, now that this podcast is from a beautiful UK, I lived in UK for 8 years. My daughter was born there, and I have a lot of affiliation and affection with UK. But I remember vividly a moment that what these things happened into my mind. I was walking in Holland Park. I go into the office, and I always wanted to be head of human resource and international organization. And off you go. I'm in my mid-40s. I'm head of HR for European Bank, live in a beautiful part of London. Married a wonderful wife. I have a lovely kid. And from certain external, approaches, you feel, this guy is a successful one. But in reality, I started to be miserable, to think, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. Now, I'm not prepared to put the next 20 years the way I put the last 20. And so something entered into my mind, thinking, Paolo, you need to consider what is next. And sure enough, I got a coach that helped me a couple of years later, because for the first 2 years, maybe I'm tired, maybe I'm stressed, maybe it's a bad day. But then this little voice became a shout, became a very present element in my life. And then a coach who really helped me to figure it out what I wanted to do next. And I was so much in love with the process and the learning of that experience that I became a coach myself. So I stopped working for 2 years. I got a master in coaching. And I thought maybe what I can do is to help others, because I know it's a bloody difficult moment in your professional and personal life.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I always think when you hit a leadership role, it's like, who does the go-to person go to? Like, who do you go to when you're in that spot? And I think it's so interesting you went to a coach, and I think it's so useful to speak to people, because you kind of, it sounds like for you, the couple of years, you were in your head and you were thinking about, this feeling was growing, and then speaking and having a conversation with someone is so powerful, and it starts to crystallize many thoughts that you might have.
No, exactly, because perhaps one of the traits when you're playing the better game is you're convinced that you can do it alone. Okay, and to a certain extent, it's true, because the determination, the grit, the fatigue, the sweat that you put into improving what you're doing belongs to you. You are the one who pay the price. You are the one who put in so many hours. And then when you get to this stage, you still believe that you can solve it alone. And my experience that no, you can't. You really need to have a sparring partner. Could be a coach, could be a friend, somebody who does not have a vested interest in the equation that can help you out figure it out. What could be a meaningful second part of your life. And so with the 7 games of leadership in my new book, I devote an entire chapter to say, don't worry, that moment occurs to everybody. Okay, so you're not crazy, you're not stupid, you're not sick. It's a moment that it's hitting everybody. It's like Christmas. No, it's coming. So don't worry, it's coming. And therefore you probably need to get prepared in that moment. And there is a process that usually lasts anything between 1 to 3 years, usually a couple of years, from the moment you realize that the second part of life can't be what you've done the last 20, to the moment where you finally figured out what is a meaningful path for you. If you postpone it, it's okay for 1, 2, maybe 3 years, but eventually it's coming to you. It's like the tax man. So it's coming back to say, hey, listen, you can. So, my suggestion is, maybe it's not urgent. It's not so that you need to solve immediately, and don't feel that, you have to resign and then, become a, I don't know, scuba diving instructor in the Maldives. That could be wonderful.
Good job.
It sounds good, but it's not necessarily a feasible option for all of us. No, it takes time. There is a process, and there is a great phrase that I took it from another book called Transitions, that every beginning starts with an end. So when you realize that something's coming to an end, that's the beginning of the new beginning. Okay.
Yes.
So when you internalize the moment of change, you're not just changing, you're transforming yourself. And when you do this, and if you do it in a meaningful way, I think you may end up having a beautiful reinvention. And the reinvent game is game number 5. And again, reinvention is not a new picture on LinkedIn. Reinvention is a moment of finding a new purpose, and maybe finding other means and other modalities to add value in something that makes sense to you. So in a way, you're becoming more self-centered, not in terms of self-image, but in terms of clarity about what to do next.
Yeah, love that. So really, it's once you've accepted that this particular chapter is coming to an end, then you can then start to focus on the new. Because I think a lot of people, it's quite sad's the right word, but you hold on to that chapter, don't you, in your life? You don't want it to go.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. Because there is a game which is the last one, which is let go. And let go is not an act of weakness, is an act of awareness. And I want to give a very simple example, which is to me was another moment to me. Many years ago, I created a group made by human resource directors of international organizations. And I remember I literally created this group and I invited all of them at the BRD, and I can even tell you the year. It was 2003, so literally 20 years ago, okay? So I sent an invite to say, I think it's time for us guys to spend 2 or 3 days together, because we're struggling with the same issues. And it was a very successful event because, more than 150 people came from literally all over the globe. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I became a superstar, but it was the first one who thought about doing this. No? So, of course, it was a great event, great speakers. I organized a couple of social events. And I've been member of that group for 17 years, also because they look at me as like, this is the guy who created it, okay? So then when I left the World Economic Forum in 2018, there was the very same meeting that I created 20 years before, and I wasn't invited. And Jesus, Lewis, it really, really hurts. Because I say, my God, I created a damn thing, and that I'm not head of HR, nobody gives a shit, fundamentally, No, but then I said, okay, Paolo, but you've made a choice, and the choice is you're now an executive coach, you're not an author. I believe I'm still adding value, but in a different modality. So let it go. It was hurtful because when I saw the pictures on LinkedIn and people giving speeches, etc., there was 10% of me that was really not happy. I guarantee to you, I was actually very disappointed. But then, I calmed down a bit and I said, well, Paolo, that's a choice. So in your choice, let it go implies also letting go certain modalities that were belonging to you when you were doing that. So be consistent. And if you decided not to be part of that, you're not going to be part of that. You cannot not be part of that except that moment. No? It's like I'm getting a divorce, on Saturday I'm having a pizza with my wife. It doesn't really work. So luckily, I'm not, by the way.
Wow, it's a good story. It's hard. It's hard. No, you don't want to be excluded. You've spent so much of your life doing the thing that you've been doing. It's not late.
You know, Lewis, you know this because you are also running a very successful adapting company. Of course, it's hard. And the way I see is, you know, there is a beautiful Bob Dylan song, I can use anymore, remove my badge, I can use it, knocking on heaven's door, no? When you work in a company, Citibank, Procter & Gamble, Gucci, Ferrari, Deloitte, Banco Santander, whatever, Bristol, whatever company you work for, you have a badge because fundamentally your identity is strongly correlated to the one of the firm that you represent, no? And in fact, to an extent, you're a bit of an ambassador of that company, no? And one thing that people don't understand that when, for example, I was invited right and left to give speeches, they were not inviting Paolo Gallo. They were inviting the World Bank. They were inviting the European Bank. They were inviting, you know, what economic forum, no? So, but people tend not to understand this. And I'm going to quote my first boss, probably the best one I've ever had, that told me, I'm going to say something that is a bit rude, but it's so funny that you always remember. He always told me, Paolo, please don't confuse your chair with your ass. These are two different things, okay? and right. Now, your chair is the position that you have, okay? Your ass is who you are. These are two different things, okay? And so when you work in big organization, perhaps with some good reputation in the market, you represent this organization. When you leave this organization, you have to remove the badge, not just the badge that you use when you enter to the building, but the identity that you have by working in that company. And when you do this, is a watershed moment. It's a difficult moment of realization to say who I am as an individual. And in fact, I have to tell you another story, which is a funny story. When my first book was released, this one, The Compass and the Rest, this was released on October 2018, and I came to London to present the book. This story to me, I should have written it in the new book, but I didn't. Anyway, maybe next one.
The next one.
So I came to London to present the book. I remember I was interviewed by BBC, 3 minutes, very short interview, but yeah, it was kind of nice. And on the way back, I'm at Heathrow Airport, and I see a guy picking up my book from Waterstone bookstore. So I was very pleased to see this guy picking up my book. And then the guy picked up the book, have a look at the book, and after 10 seconds, he put it back. I said, shit, the guy doesn't buy the book. So I approached him and I said, sorry to disturb you, sir, but why do you pick up that book? And he said, oh, I really liked the subtitle, The Art of Building a Rewarded Career While Remaining True to Yourself. I really like the subtitle. I said, oh, that's very nice. And can I ask you why you didn't buy it? It's too expensive. And he said, no, it's not the price. I mean, all the books are like 20, 25 pounds. That's not the point. I said, why you didn't buy it? And the guy approached me and said, do you want me to tell you the truth? I said, yes. And he looked at the book. He did this. I said, Paolo Gallo, who the fuck is this guy? I said, nice to meet you. My name is Paolo. And the guy couldn't believe it. And it's a good story, but it's a story where fundamentally means, I don't want to repeat the F word, but there is a moment you need to have clarity about who you are. Okay.
Yes.
And what you stand for. And it's not about, a nice picture on LinkedIn. It's about clarity of purpose and clarity of the value that you add in doing whatever you do. And when you do that, then people relate to you, and maybe they come to you, maybe they buy your books, no? But if you can't really answer to that question, doing branding with a new picture or with a new web page or whatever, in my view, is useless, because this is the icing on the cake. You need to worry about the cake first.
So hard though, right? Like if you think about someone's life, it's education. You go to university, whatever, and it's like, hey, I went to this school, and hey, I went to this university, and you have all these badges you're collecting. And then if you go into a corporate career, again, you're right. It's kind of like defining many people, right? I work for a Ferrari, PwC, Deloitte, whatever. It's interesting though, because when you then go to, if you've done what you do, what you've done, which is, you pulled out of your corporate career, and the next chapter for you has been as an individual, speaker, writer, coach, wonderful. And that's when it dawns on you, right, that you need to start building your personal brands, or were people inviting you for that talk just because you were at the World Bank or the World Economic Forum or whatever. It's a real tough thing to do, certainly at that stage in life, when you're so used to, all of these brand names and invites and things like that. If you're in it, I think the interesting thing, if I think about my own career, I've been an entrepreneur. I've started my own business. I've not worked for large recruiting firms or brands. And so my thing very early on has been personal brands, contributing, podcasts, writing, building my personal brand, which nowadays you can do much easier on social media than you could when I started. But it sounds small, but it's a real, it's quite daunting, I think, for many folks when you're having to do that a little bit later on as your second or third career.
No, it is, and it is scary because I'm very open with you. I trust you. You're a great guy, and I can trust you. But when I left the World Economic Forum, I was 55. I'm now 60, no? And my wife she's a wonderful person, but she was at work, and my daughter at the time was only 12. So I woke up a few times in the middle of the night thinking, and then what? Okay. I mean, it wasn't only about the money side, it's also about the meaning side, and the meaning is so when you wake up in the morning, what do you do? Okay. And that's not easy. I'm not for a second thinking that it's just, a new web page or a new LinkedIn profile. It's really thinking hard to say, how do I add value? And how do you, after removing your badge of a very prestigious and well-known organization like World Bank or whatever it is, how do you establish your credibility in the marketplace? And social media definitely helps. I have 40,000 followers. This year I got 20 million views in my post, which is quite a lot. But it's not about that. It's about the value that you add. It's also the consistency of behavior. No, for example, I accepted jobs that are not really well paid, and it turned out jobs that maybe were paid because I don't want to be affiliated maybe with some companies or people that I don't particularly trust. No, so how do you maintain consistency in your values? And I've learned a lot from sports I always quote Bruce Springsteen, whatever thing I do in my life. No, you may dislike Bruce Springsteen, but everybody should recognize that the guy's been consistent with a message all his life, like Bob Dylan. No, so to me, consistency of the values. You may not like his music, but you recognize that he's credible in his own domain, and that's pretty much what I'm trying to do. Which is, you don't feel that coaching or reading a book is relevant. I respect your view, but I think people recognize that what I put in my job, it could be a speech, it could be a book or whatever it is consistent with the person that I am, because my purpose is to help big organizations, not to make money. And when you do this, money will come.
But one thing, if I may say, one thing and then this word gets bandied around a lot, but you've been very adaptable. The fact, if you look at even at your social media and your LinkedIn and stuff, to grow the followers, to do the content, to do podcasts, all of these sort of things, you've adapted incredibly well to what one needs to do today to build the personal brands. And a lot of folks on social, on content, haven't been able to adapt. And I think that links into leadership, right? There's so many things going on. The world's changing incredibly quickly. And I think the ones that are able to stay relevant or build that second career are the ones that can adapt. Because it's like, you hear what they're saying all the time, I've always done it like this, or this has always worked for me. And it might have worked for you there, or maybe that person has got to that place because it's worked for them, but that's not necessarily going to get you to where you want to go to. And I think it's great what you've been able to do. I think it's an important lesson.
Right, listen, Lewis, first of all, thank you for your comment. And then the question to me is, adaptability, where is the starting point? No, and to me, it's by listening. Is by listening. Let me maybe provide an example. I said that the two of us, we open an ice cream shop. Okay, we open in an ice cream shop and we put 50 flavors. Here in Switzerland or France, they call it perfume, for a reason that I fail to understand. No, perfumes, like, okay. And we put like 50 flavors, okay? And then, summer season comes, and then October comes and we close the ice cream shop. You need to understand what people want. I mean, if you have 80% of the people who want ice cream, they're eating chocolate, vanilla, and pistachio, and strawberry, and nobody wants to have a coconut or banana and ice cream, you need to listen what people are telling you, no? And I have a good fortune to work as executive coach with a lot of CEOs and executive teams. And it's quite interesting to see how the frequency of the topics that they come up, no? And regardless of the size of organization, the seniority of the individual. So when you listen 10, 12, 15 people per day, every single freaking day, I just had a call with a bank in Italy. Later in the afternoon, I will have a call with the leadership team in the United States. Last night, I was awake at midnight to talk to a senior leader in New York. And on Saturday, I will talk to a few people in India. When you constantly listen, people, what did you learn? What are the things that constantly emerge as a topic that they are interested, they're struggling? What keeps them awake at night, okay? And when you listen once or twice, maybe, okay, but when you listen every single freaking day for many years, you see some things that constantly emerge, and then you need to adapt. And adaptation is not a marketing strategy, it's a willingness to go one step further, to say, okay, I hear what you say, and let's see if I can help you. And when you do this, transformation is a natural flow. If you don't do this, you just do marketing, you try to push whatever you want to sell. In some cases it works, in some cases it doesn't, but you miss the opportunity to really engage with individuals.
So true. I always say, like, it's listen to understand, not to respond. There's so much of what you see now. People are trying to argue your point, or trying to convince you that my way of thinking is the right way. So much, debating, arguing, constant. You see it everywhere. I think for me, like, such an important skill I'm trying to teach this to my kids is the art of conversation, and a big part of that, to your point, is listening. And if you listen to understand, then you can incorporate all of this stuff. You can listen to what the position this person is, and then you can start to move forward. I think it's such an important thing at all stages of life, career. I'm trying to get better at that. I mean, it's just it's something that you can keep improving on, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, this. I'm sure that my wife would definitely agree that I can improve on that on the front, But seriously, how do you convince people? And the answer is by listening to them, or by reframing the problem that they're trying to solve. No, so that's one of the reasons why I love coaching more than management, which is coaching is not about telling you that you should be doing A, B, or C. It's not evaluating, it's not judging. Is not ranking people, is to say, did they understand correctly that this is your issue? Yeah, and perhaps maybe there are other options that you may consider. And what's happening right now, I mean, I don't want to enter into politics, but Israel doesn't listen to Palestine, and Palestine doesn't listen to Israel. And that's very sad, because the consequences of shouting louder is usually a conflict. And I'm not talking about politics now, but it talks about leadership and management. A couple of days ago, for example, a CEO called me to say, Paolo, gave a speech and nobody was listening. Everybody's lazy in my company. And I said, well, that's an option. You have 2,000 lazy people. That's option one. Option two is perhaps, you may engage them differently. And can we explore that option? And we can leave there maybe the other option. Maybe you can call the chat director and fire everybody in the company. And I put a bit of humor. He's a wonderful guy. I like him a lot. He trusts me. And he said, Paolo, yeah, maybe, calling a town hall meeting at 7:00 on Friday was a good idea. That's a good start. He said, my friend, you call at 9:00 on Monday morning when people have energy, 7:00 in the evening, you want to go back home and having maybe a pint at the pub. No, so you have people that perhaps the thinking process wasn't devious, but wasn't necessarily the best one to get the outcome they expected. No, so when you do this, you help people to not to feel bad, but to say perhaps that decision that I, in good faith, took at that moment wasn't really the best one. How can I relook at the way I take decisions rather than blaming people that I didn't appreciate one?
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, us humans, it's very difficult to do that, right? I mean, and you're right. So whether it's politics, work, whatever it is, I think so many of the problems, issues, people are very stuck in their way of thinking, and they're trying to convince people, and they're trying to, whatever it is. And I think there's so much to be said for, have a cup of tea, sit down.
Yeah. No,
it's a conversation.
You solve the problem by listening to the other people, and listening to the people doesn't mean that you agree with, okay? But at least to understand the perspective from the other side. And, it has been each other, right? To give you a very simple, but I think a meaningful example, no? For example, my job was once per year to go to the board with a proposal for the salary increase of the bonus. And usually it's not an easy conversation, no? Because the board probably doesn't want to give you money, okay? The CFO probably doesn't want to give you money. The staff association of the unions, they want you to put as much money as possible. There's people in the team, they want to have as many bonuses as they can because they want to buy a villa in the French Riviera. Your colleagues are pushing you because they have a vested interest to get money in their own pocket. And the colleagues, they're doing, the senior jobs in other organization, they are trying to find an intelligent compromise. So how do you start? You don't start by just putting a number, even if the number is technically correct. You start by listening people's perspective, listening people's view, and try to find a compromise. And compromise is not a bad word. It's the capacity to find a solution that is probably, as you guys said in UK, is fair enough for everybody involved. Perhaps not the best one, but it's fair enough. So how do you do that? It's not just the technical skills, it's the capacity to listen, the capacity to sit down, to understand how the people viewpoint. That doesn't mean you agree with, but at least you acknowledge that there's another perspective. When you do this, I think you're a leader because you're focused on the solution. If you belong to one faction and say, yeah, the red are the right one, the blue are the wrong one, vice versa, you're not exercising leadership. You're becoming a hooligan that is just shouting louder, hoping the shouting louder will convince other people to come on your camp. And usually it doesn't happen.
Great. It's so true. Love that. I mean, actually, some of the best leaders I know or that I've worked with, they have that skill and that ability to listen. And you know what? When you're listened to, you really like the person that's listening to you. Right? And then so if you're listening, people are liking you. You're building trust. You can then start to influence, lead, and things like that, which I think is wonderful. One thing I'm doing, if I want to share this, talking about listening to people that you don't necessarily agree with. Jump on YouTube, find someone that you really disagree with fundamentally, dive into a 20-minute video. You can't argue back. You can't have the conversation. Just listen. Really hard, like really difficult, because so many, we have our social media feeds. It's usually an echo chamber of people that agree with us. Try diving into someone that has a completely different view, and then go and speak to a team member. See how you go.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful thing.
It's a good exercise that I would try. So thanks for the advice.
Pleasure. I want to end on something. Just we've talked about leaders. I want to. There's a whole raft of folks just below. So people that the next step is leadership, and they find it, I think, difficult. Well, firstly, difficult to find their first leadership role, but also once they're in it, it's a difficult spot because you're not really trained, I don't think, earlier on in your career to be a leader. And often you get thrust into a leadership role. People are they're trying to find their feet amongst all the chaos and any advice for people that they're in that position. They've just got into their first leadership role. Everything's going on in the world. They've got no idea what to do. No one's around to help. What are the things that they could do?
let me answer by asking you a question, no? And then from your answer, you gotta get the answer, okay? So one of the questions that I always ask in pretty much every workshop, every speech, every lesson that I give, and I've done this, believe me, Lewis, probably for 20 years. So I think I asked this question, I don't know, 500 times, maybe more, okay? I always ask to people, and I love to hear your answer, that the answer has to come from your heart, to say, when you think about the best leader that you've ever worked in your life, which word comes to your mind? Tell me, Lewis.
Human.
Okay. Give me a couple more. Human,
empathetic, kind.
Okay, that's beautiful, because this was, to me, was not a social experiment, because I already knew the answer. Because every single time I ask this question, and believe me, I ask this question to 500 CEOs at Davos, I ask this question to kids at school, I ask this question in Zimbabwe, in China, in Thailand, in Brazil, in every country, of people of different ages, seniority, and positions, students. They always answered by putting a human quality, empathy, trust, compassion, support, vision, energy. These are integrity. This is what I'm hearing constantly, okay? So what does it mean for us that aspire to be leaders? The leadership starts by being, not by doing. Okay, so I'm not saying that a leader should not achieve any results. I mean, if you're running a company, you need to get some results. If you're coaching a soccer team, you need to get the soccer team to win some games. But the reason why, I know it sounds a bit commercial here, the reason why I wrote this freaking book is simply to say, guys, if you want to grow as a leader, it starts from you, okay? And by asking this question, people reflect to say, well, it's true, because when I think about a leader, I don't think about, this guy got a PhD in economics, or the guy wrote a book, or maybe speak 4 languages, or double the revenues, or cut the cost. Nobody think of leaders in terms of something that they've achieved. They think of leaders in terms of something that they are. And when I think about my own journey, I work with amazing people that I immensely respect and like, and maybe try even to learn, and also work with a couple of individuals. So let me put it in an English term. Perhaps they were suboptimal in that journey, So one of the things that I wouldn't say advice, because I'm a coach, I don't give advice, is to say, when you reflect about your own journey, and when you look back at your life, the people that you respected the most, the people that gained respect and trust and integrity and compassion and empathy from you. So try to emulate what you said that you admire. Try to be that way, because if people trust you and respect you, and respect is based on integrity, it's not based on power, you can become a leader. If you play the power game, or you maybe try to do the better game even when you're a leader, let me prove that I'm better than my team. No, you have to prove that the team is better than you. That's a different sport, no? And when you do that, then the magic happens, because people will follow you. They get phenomenal results. If you're still in command and you think that the only way of exercising leadership is to prove that you're better than everybody around you, you are by definition not a leader. So that book hopefully help people in their own journey to leadership to reflect about their own growing, which is what I've seen in the last 35 years. I think exactly the story that told my daughter doing the sushi dinner a couple of years ago.
Lovely. What a great place to end, Paolo. Thank you so much. Brilliant advice.
Right.
How can they find your book? Amazon, Waterstones?
Yeah, you find it on Amazon, of course, and heavy writer, of course, hope that the book is meaningful. And yeah, please, hopefully it could be a helpful journey, helpful help in your journey as a leader. And if you do buy and read it, please contact me on LinkedIn or put a review or whatever. I'd love to get in touch. I love when people engage with me. Yesterday was a person who called me to say, Paolo, She's a friend. So I'm at the airport in Amsterdam. Just bought your book. I read it already, but I bought a copy. Oh, that's given me joy. So please do so and enjoy the reading.
Love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Really good to hear your insights on everything. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, Lewis, for inviting me to your podcast today. Grazie. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Please do not forget to subscribe in all the usual places: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you like to watch or listen to a podcast. Any comments or feedback, please drop us a DM. If you've got anything that you want us to discuss, again, feel free to get in touch. Have a wonderful day.